Welcome to the Murfreesboro City Council meeting Thursday, May 28th, 2015, 4 o'clock. And we're going to discuss our budget today. But before that, Mr. Bill Shacklet has the prayer and the pledge.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this day and for this wonderful community and for all those that call this community their home. Lord, we pray for those that educate our children, those that keep our neighborhoods safe, for all those that labor on a daily basis to provide us with the quality of life that we enjoy here in Murfreesboro. We pray, dear Lord, tonight that you'd give us wisdom to make those decisions and to do those things that you've called us to do. And we thank you for all those people who contribute their minds and their hearts to the betterment of our community. Pray for those less fortunate and for, Lord, those that in need in our community. May we be ever mindful of their presence in our community. Bless us as we seek to be your people in this place and in this time. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we've got a little bit of business to take care of before we get into our budget review. New business, we'll consider for adoption Resolution 15R13 for entry into a state industrial access road project. Mr. Crumley.
This is Project Whirlwind. This is a 550-foot extension off of Joe B. Jackson to serve a potential industrial client in that area. The TDOT application is ready to go. Item B will ask you to defer. We're not quite ready to go forward with that grant application.
We're going to set a public hearing?
No, it's just adoption of resolution, correct?
Correct.
Just need a motion.
This is the typical state of Tennessee form that they ask us to use.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll now move into third readings and consider for passage on third and final reading Ordinance 15026, amending the Murfreesboro City Code, Chapter 4, Alcoholic Beverages, Article 3, Beer, and Article 4, Nudity on Premises.
Move for passage. Second.
Motion and second. Ms. Wright, call the roll.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll consider for passage on third and final reading Ordinance 15032, amending Chapter 33, Water and Sewer, Section 33.1 of the Murfreesboro City Code, dealing with minimum monthly water and sewer allowances and minimum monthly sewer charges.
Move for passage. Second.
Motion and second. Ms. Wright?
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll move into second readings and consider for passage on second reading Ordinance 15OZ29 to rezone an area along Agri Park Drive to residential multifamily 16 RM16 district.
Move for passage.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Consider for passage on second reading Ordinance 15OZ30 to rezone an area along Veterans Parkway to commercial fringe CF district and single family residential RS8 district.
Move for passage on second reading.
Second.
Motion is second.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance. Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Consider for passage on second reading Ordinance 15OZ31 to amend the conditions applicable to the Plan Unit Development District located on the west side of Fortress Boulevard in the Victory Station PUD.
Move for passage.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Before we move into the budget review, we're missing one council member this afternoon, and Mr. Smotherman is not feeling well, and so he took one for the team and said, I'm not going to come and get everyone sick. So I know he's watching on TV, and we hope you get to feeling better. We don't need a motion for that.
Second.
All right. We'll move in to continue reviewing our 2015-2016 proposed budget, and we'll move to the police fund. You'll find that on page 109, and then after the police fund, we'll move into the drug fund, and that'll be on page 239. Chief Chrisman.
Mayor and council members, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you as always to present our budget for the coming fiscal year. And we'll get to that shortly. I would like, as we always do, to begin by talking a little bit about the work product of the police department for the past year. As was mentioned earlier, it is the largest city department and contributes much to the quality of life in our city, as Mr. Shacklett mentioned in his prayer. I'm very thankful for that. Included in your information that was provided as a part of the budget, we report to you that Part 1 crimes in Murfreesboro declined by 4% in 2014 from the year previous. We also reported to you that last year we reached an all-time high in calls for police service at 108,687 calls for service, averaging just under 300 calls for service each day. Uniformed officers and detectives were responsible for initiating 12,324 criminal charges, over a 6% increase from the year before. And our criminal investigation staff processed and investigated several high-profile cases and have cleared all but 2 of the homicides from 2014 by arrest or other means. From the Uniform Division perspective, officers issued 37,417 citations, which include just under 20,000 violations and about 17,500 warnings in traffic-related cases and another 19,750 parking citations. 18,284 civil citations were issued using the automated red light enforcement system, and our Murfreesboro Police Alcohol Countermeasures team and other uniformed officers initiated 831 driving under the influence arrests. Lest you think that the mission of the Murfreesboro Police Department is simply about call response, arrests, and disposing of those issues that are brought to the attention of the police, our DARE and great staff that work in Murfreesboro City Schools provided anti-drug, anti-gang, anti-violence instruction for 2,130 Murfreesboro City School children, as well as children that attend St. Rose Catholic School and the Middle Tennessee Christian School, K through 6th grade students. It has indeed been a busy year for us. We are excited about the fiscal year as we move into 2015-16. For FY 2015 accomplishments, in addition to those things that I've already mentioned, we did make substantial progress toward the design development phase for the new police headquarters located at 1004 North Highland. With some minor adjustments that the council had recommended, the design development of that project is virtually complete. We also have made substantial progress towards the design phase of the two-way public safety radio tower network. You may recall that over several borrowing cycles in the capital improvement budget, 5 towers are proposed for construction that would extend public safety two-way radio communication to the extent of the urban growth boundary and should provide for a very powerful and very efficient public safety two-way radio network for generations. Goals for the police department for 2016. The number one thing on our list, I think, is continuing to do everything we can do to improve quality of life in our city. If you look at those things that often result in loss of life in the city of Murfreesboro, they are often connected to violent crime, specifically drug activity and or gang-related criminal activity. So the first item on our department goal list for 2016 is the same as it was last year, and that's to continue and enhance an aggressive gang interdiction strategy using our existing resources as well as local, state, and federal partnerships and any available funding which we can use to expand those efforts. I shared with Mr. Lyons a few minutes ago by email, and I suspect it will be in the newspaper tomorrow, that the United States Attorney issued a press release earlier today that said that Charles Eugene Franklin, 34 years old, of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, was sentenced yesterday by United States District Court Judge Todd Campbell to 188 months in federal prison for being a convicted felon in possession of a firearm and possession with intent to distribute cocaine and cocaine-based. That was announced by the United States Attorney David Rivera. Franklin was initially charged in October of 13, pled guilty in August of 14, and was sentenced, and that case was reported today. Here's what the United States Attorney said. When repeat offenders continue to engage in criminal conduct without regard for previous punishment, we will bring federal resources and invoke appropriate federal statute as we seek to remove them from the community for a long period of time. There is no parole in the federal system. I would point out to you that this case was one that was a collaborative effort between the Murfreesboro Police Department, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, and that case was prosecuted by Assistant United States Attorney Joe Montemini. That is a prime example of leveraging the resources that we work very, very diligently to build with our federal partners, our state partners, and certainly the local district attorney and all of our other local law enforcement agencies. That directly impacts quality of life and serious crime that results in the loss of life in our community, and we'll continue to leverage that at every opportunity. In your department goals, there are 3 more bullets there that I think are worth mentioning, because beyond violent crime that results in loss of life in the city of Murfreesboro, the next most frequent thing, unfortunately, is loss due to traffic deaths. So in 2016, we will continue using our automated traffic enforcement systems. We'll continue using our selective traffic enforcement efforts. We'll continue to partner with the Governor's Highway Safety Office to do everything that we can to use conventional and automated enforcement in our city to make sure that people are obeying speed limits, that they are obeying signs and signals, that they're not driving under the influence, and through our aggressive driving unit, hopefully that we're able to target more people that are distracted while they're driving on our streets. In 2016, we'll continue, obviously, to work on the new headquarters facility on Highland, the public safety training facility that we've discussed, the radio tower network and the radio system that we're in the middle of working on. And in the budget, there are 5 additional positions for Murfreesboro Police, 2 new police positions that will go to uniform patrol, and there is a supervisor and 2 detectives, which are new positions that will be assigned to criminal investigations with the intent of standing up a human trafficking unit. If you've watched any of the coverage in recent weeks, you've noticed that the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has launched a new 4-person human trafficking unit for the state of Tennessee. Our intention here, and we appreciate the city manager's support and yours, is to devote those 3 resources to addressing that problem aggressively and making sure that Murfreesboro is a hard target for people who would want to come here and take advantage of, manipulate people who are susceptible to being involved in that kind of criminal activity. We're excited about that opportunity to expand services and be able to address that very powerfully, and appreciate your support of those efforts. Mayor, with those comments, I will be glad to answer any questions you have about the General Police Department budget for FY16.
Chief, to those detectives, are they promoted from within, or how do you find those people?
Yes, sir. They'll be selected. There'll be a competitive selection process, as there are with all of our positions, the sergeant as well, and then we'll backfill those vacancies as new hires at the police level.
Thank you, sir.
Any more questions for Chief Chrisman?
Mr. Lyons, what percentage of the population increased last year? Was it 2%?
I believe we've been running it more like 3
or 4.
3%.
Okay. A 3% increase and a 4% reduction in crime. When you put those together, that's a really good number.
It's the 3rd successive year for decreases as well. We're blessed. Thank you for all your support.
And I want to echo what the chief said. I know conversations I've had with the mayor. It is unfortunate in this day and time that we've got to address issues such as human trafficking and prostitution, but they're not welcome in our community. And with conversations and things I've learned about that and information from the chief, we need to make this a hard target for Murfreesboro, and devoting attention to that It's an issue all across Tennessee. We're not unique in that, but that is not welcome here, and having a unit to focus solely on that, we think, is a good step in the right direction.
As it relates to the increase in population of being 3%, looks like a 5% increase in your staff is only about a 2% increase, so very relevant to discussion of the size of your force. Is that right?
It is, and I think one of the things that we all recognize, particularly as we look at Murfreesboro 25, we all anticipate growth, and I think what management is attempting to do is make stepwise increases in staff as they are economically possible.
And we've increased 11 personnel since 2013, so we've had incremental increases in the number of police officers. It seems to work better than having large increases in 1 year. Sometimes that gets to be a challenge in hiring, but incrementally as the community's grown, we've continued to pay attention to the size of the police department.
Chief Chrisman, I know we've been discussing this, but a concern I have, and hear this echoing throughout the community, and maybe this is something to talk about. Really, when we talk about the budget, we talk about maybe things to focus on. And I had gotten a report of calls to some of our local motels, and one motel specifically was over almost 1,000 calls. And when we look at the amount of resources that takes for our police officers, and really how much that costs taxpayers in having to send our team out there every time on a call, is that something we can really try to focus on between city staff and the police department to try to look at how we need to work on that, as far as putting some of that back on the owners if we're having to make those calls?
As we shared in the email, Mayor, I think there are some things that certainly we can do there. And as I indicated, I think that needs to be a collective, kind of a collaborative effort, looking at all of those factors. I think one of the things that's given, as you noted in your message, was anytime you have densely populated areas, particularly if you have folks that may be struggling in their life situation, whether it's financial, substance, whatever those issues are, they are going to have a higher call for service demand for police from a variety of reasons. And I don't know that that's different in any of the parts of any community where you have those factors. Certainly we've had success, Mr. Lyons and I have had success dealing with property owners where we've had repetitive calls, where we've had issues that were of concern to the community around MTSU and other places. And I think there's an opportunity to make some improvement there, and I think that's just something we need to focus on.
Sure. All right. We'll move to the drug fund, page 239.
And it runs through, I think, 237, 8, 9, maybe 240. The drug fund, as you see, is revenue that results from drug fines and confiscated property seized by the police department. And the money that is in that fund is used to create a balanced budget, if you will, for the operation of those functions within the police department that are directly connected to that. Ms. Wright and her staff help us manage that very, very effectively along with our staff. You will notice that in addition to the enforcement activities that are funded by the money that comes from confiscations and from fines from the courts, we also do spend some of that money in our education process and to provide funding support for some of the needs of DARE officers, some of their training and other things as they become necessary. For FY 2015, there are several things that were noted there in accomplishments. I won't call attention to all of those, but will note one of them that was a collaborative investigation, as most of these things are, where you would notice that a trafficking investigation in which marijuana and prescription pills were being brought in from other states and sold in Murfreesboro. And as a result of that investigation, 3 pounds of marijuana were recovered, 300 roxicodone pills. One individual was arrested, almost $121,000 in cash was seized, and a vehicle was seized with an estimated value of $65,000. You don't read those things on the front page of the paper every day because typically they represent ongoing criminal investigations. There may be informants or criminal defendants whose testimony is still to be obtained. There could be ongoing investigations where their information is being leveraged in the criminal investigation process, both locally, statewide, and in some cases federally. But there are some great examples on there of accomplishments for FY15, and as we've already stated for FY16, the biggest thing that we anticipate, this human trafficking unit will be attached to our vice gang and drug investigation unit, because oftentimes I think what we'll find in a human trafficking investigation is there's a nexus between all three of those. So those people will be assigned to that unit, and they will begin aggressively looking at people who are in Murfreesboro, traveling to Murfreesboro, targeting Murfreesboro for those kinds of activities. And what I am certain will be an outgrowth of that is that we will find people that are involved in drug trafficking, drug activity, and probably gang enterprise activity there as well. So that is a large goal for us, for the drug fund and for the people that are attached to that unit for FY16. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have about the drug fund budget.
Any questions? Chief Chrisman, as always, thank you for what you and your team do.
Thank you very much for your support. We're blessed.
Amen.
We are very blessed.
All right, we have the Fire and Rescue Department. Chief Gaines, and we have had the opportunity to give a welcome this morning that we had our Tennessee Fire Association that is having their, is it 83rd annual conference?
Correct. Unfortunately, I missed that event, but I'll try to make it up the next couple of days.
Well, our Honor Guard did a great job representing the city. They presented the colors and really did a phenomenal job.
I appreciate those comments, Mayor, and as always, they always do a great job. Mayor, members of council, city staff, I present for your consideration for approval the proposed 2015-16 fiscal year budget for the Murfreesboro Fire and Rescue. But before I get into the actual crunching of the numbers, I'd like to do give a little information as far as the council directives that were issued years ago. And kind of being that I'm transitioning out, I want to make sure that we have some clarity as to where we are and to some extent how we got here. The community engagement, we still are posting PSAs as far as home fire hazards and making the public aware of unattended cooking, things of that nature. We do post monthly fire safety tips. We post links to the department's monthly newsletter and annual report. And the special events team that was formulated in 2013, since its inception, they have conducted 340 total inspections and given away 58 car seats as well as installed those. So I want to commend them for that. And the department currently has 57 techs that are licensed to do that. The past fiscal year, we did 217 PR events with an estimated 24,194 public contacts. We did 16 special events, team events, with an estimated 11,622 contacts. Fiscal year 2015 accomplishments. We upgraded the medical first responder to basic life support services on July the 28th, 2014. We purchased 1 pump and 2 aerials, and they were completed and delivered in December of 2014. The fire investigation trailer funded through a FEMA grant was delivered on November the 21st. The equipment was purchased and placed on the trailer. The trailer was placed in service in January of this current calendar year. We conducted our 12th Citizen Fire Academy, and we purchased and installed 16 rocket vehicle routers that will increase the connectivity in our modems. Fiscal year 2016 departmental goals. Hopefully we will begin construction of a training facility, prepare specifications for the purchase of a 100-foot platform aerial, continue to transition it from EMTIV to AEMT, which is a state-mandated requirement by 2016. We'll train personnel on a new electronic patient care reporting software, and Assistant Chief Lawson is ecstatic about this coming to fruition, but that is tied to the IT CIP purchase item, so hopefully that will occur. And we're looking to increase the training hours for suppression, medical, and special operations. I did not make a recommendation to open Station 10 due to the data. It did not support it. And just to give you a brief overview from the history of Station 10, in 2009 there were 42 calls for service, 2010 99 calls for service, 2011 455 calls for service, 2012 408 calls for service. The 2011 to 2012 were the peak years, but as you can see, it's trending back to the decreasing side of 2013, 218 calls for service, and 2014, 246 calls for service. So you can see that the call really did not support staffing at this time. But let me state this. Deputy Chief and the Fire Marshals, they do a quarterly assessment of Station 10 as far as permits pool, the amount of calls, service in that area, so that don't ever want to get caught trying to play catch up when we're already behind. So they stay ahead of it and do an assessment every quarter. Then we do a semi-annual report on it that we present to the city manager as well. To the actual numbers in the budget. The tentative budget is projected at $17,567,756. This is a projected increase of $993,423 from last fiscal year. And approximately 97.5% of this increase, or $968,624, is due to personnel costs. The estimated overtime pay increased by $201,000 due to the elimination of the use of compensatory time for the suppression personnel for the upcoming fiscal year. Overtime pay will be used to cover all off-duty training, meetings, staffing, etc. for suppression personnel. And salary increases due to the class and compensation plan and study will affect the cost of the overtime. Therefore, the estimate was increased as well. We were dispatched to 9,985 calls in 2014. 6,606 were medical incidents, which represents a 67% ratio for the amount of calls being medical. We estimate that we will be called to service for 11,000 calls in 2015, with approximately 7,500 of those being medical calls. In the fall of 2015, 82 personnel will renew their credentials for the 2-year requirement through the Rutherford County Emergency Medical Services, and that is the agreement that every 2 years we have to re-credential with Rutherford County. And 25 personnel will transition from ENT IV to the state of Tennessee required advanced EMT by 2016. A few budget line items increased from the current budget, and I'll be brief on those. We'd had some minimal increases, so I'll just try to touch on the ones that had somewhat of a significant increase. Operation and maintenance line item increased $13,040. The normal costs have increased due to the volume of calls for service. The buildings, we actually had a decrease of $8,500, but that falls under that same category. The supply line item decreased $13,443. The response supplies increased, but that's where the bulk of the medical supplies are purchased out of that line item. So we did have an increase and anticipate some more increases. The child safety seat, which we're still receiving revenue from the Governor's Highway Safety Program for that, which goes into the state revenue child safety in the general fund. The utility service increased $42,000. We do have a plan to alleviate that. That's tied to the CIP, and hopefully as well that we can do something different as far as that utility service is concerned. And I will be happy to answer any question that you may have. Oh, by the way, we still have 2 grants that are open, pending. We haven't been denied, we haven't been approved, but they're still pending as far as our department.
Chief Gaines, I wish my dad had lived to see you present your last budget, because I know through the years how he kept encouraging you to keep going. You've done a fabulous job, and your department has been first class under your administration, and we just want to thank you for your dedicated years of service.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And it's not hard to do a good job when your surrounding cast supports you. And at times, and I've told them they're not as good as they think they are, but at times they are. So I'll leave it at that.
Any questions for Chief?
How many firemen are we hiring this year? 6?
None.
None?
None.
Do we have an idea of, I know we've got a couple of captains that are retiring, and how are we looking on, as someone drops off, do we bring in someone to replace those positions as far as you're promoted up, you're backfilling in?
Yeah, backfill at the firefighter level, but there's a trickle down. The captain gets retires. They'll have a promotion ceremony. If it's a driver that moves up, then the firefighter moves up to driver, and then we backfill it at firefighter.
Okay.
Robert, we at a comfortable level, we're just kind of thinking about looking at the police budget and kind of thinking along those same lines of the growth in the population. I see that we've only really grown by one. Why my microphone is like that, sorry. We've only grown by, it looks like 1 over the last 3 years. Are we at a comfortable level? I mean, I guess something I don't know about is typically how many police officers per capita? I mean, is that a reasonable thing to look at?
I think in terms of the fire and rescue department, that's something that we look at frequently. The chief made the decision in this budget year to go to overtime for the training and things that happen otherwise off duty, so that we're increasing the overtime but not having people out on comp time where we're having some staffing issues. So that was a strategic decision by the chief to ensure we had adequate personnel. That is something that we keep an eye on. We think that'll be a help for us this year. That's why you didn't add any new staff. You added significantly to the overtime line item, which will keep people in the fire station. They'll be compensated for it.
Thanks, Chief. If there are no other questions, we'll move to the Building and Codes Department. That'll be found on page 125.
Mayor and council members, thank you for the opportunity to present this year's Building and Code Department budget. I'd like to recap a little bit about what how we're projecting to finish this year as compared to how we finished the year before. As far as new single-family dwellings, the 2013-14 year, we issued 638 permits. This year, we're expecting to end at 560 new single-family dwelling permits, which you'll notice that's down some. On the upswing, renovations for single-family dwellings are up by over 100 permits. The total for the year for single-family dwellings, commercial, which commercial seems to be holding its own, for all the trade permits, plumbing, electrical, signs. This year, we're going to end up issuing 8,500 permits. Year before, we issued 7,800 permits. So, in all, permits are on the rise. It's a little surprising to see new single-family dwellings are down. As far as revenue projections, we're probably going to meet or slightly be under what we projected for this year. For the upcoming fiscal year 2015-2016, we're anticipating an increase of about 10% revenues. If you look month to month at the single-family dwelling permits, they are trending up. In April, we had the biggest month this fiscal year at 147 permits. So we're hoping that single-family dwellings will continue on the uprise. We are still working on the ADA project where we're proposing to renovate city-owned buildings to comply with the ADA. We have an architect on board preparing estimates. And to get that project started, we're also working on the sign changes that are with the Planning Commission right now. As far as employees, we're obviously not looking to increase our staff at all. We have two long-term employees, Bonnie Stem and Sheila Lilly, who've been a great asset to the department for 30 years that are going to be retiring. So there'll be some new faces in the department by the end of the summer. So with that all being said, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Any questions for Mr. Holtz? Mr. Holtz, great job.
Thank you.
We'll now move to the Planning Department. That's found on page 130.
Evening, Mayor, members of council. It's a pleasure to present the planning budget this year. Must say it's a little different than what I'm used to, but I'll give it my best. We've been extremely busy in the planning department this year, and I'd like to take an opportunity to brag on our staff. They have worked really hard. We had been short-staffed for a little while, but the City Council approved this budget year a planner position, and they will actually start next month. So we've hired somebody, and glad to have them come on board. I'd like to go over some of the numbers briefly, just to kind of give you an idea of what we have done this year. Now, these numbers are just from January to the middle of May. We have had about 2,483 customers visit the lobby in the planning department. Again, that's from January to May. Preliminary plats, final plats, applications, annexations, mandatory referrals, we've had 193. That averages about 38 submittals a month. That's a lot of work. For those of you that are on the Plan Commission, I'm sure you can understand what we've been doing because we've had some extremely long meetings, and I can't appreciate that. BZA applications, we've had 40. Historic zoning, 4. Home occupation applications, 135. New single-family dwellings and remodels, we've approved 263. And then fences, storage buildings, pools, etc. is 273. So staff has been extremely busy since January, and again, can't say enough about the staff that I've had opportunity to work with so far. They've done a great job. I'd like to talk to you about probably one of the biggest significant increases in our budget. Not a lot changed, but we did increase the surveys and studies section. That increase is actually due to some studies that are proposed. Part of that is actually a continuation of the 2035 plan that you're familiar with. A couple of the other studies that we propose to do, if approved, is an architectural design guideline study. We started that probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and the economy unfortunately declined. But we did, once we started, we did incorporate some of the landscaping and lighting requirements. Now we'd like to pick that back up for areas that like commercial highway, commercial local, all the other zones. The only actually area that we have design guidelines for architectural are the gateway. This would give us guidelines to incorporate in our zoning ordinance to help people design by. Now, we're not saying that we'd like to do that, hold the standard of the gateway, but we'd like to have some standards established. 2 other studies I'd like to talk to you about would be actually across from City Hall here. We've termed it Lower Broad. If you remember, Mr. Sam Huddleston gave a great presentation on the Town Creek. He's talking about possibly daylighting that and working on that. The 2035 plan identified that. The study for that land use area would help us tie in with whatever work we do with Town Creek to redevelop that area. And then the final one that I'm really excited about is the Highland area. It would be, we've actually kind of termed that as a cultural arts district, with the hospital leaving that area, with the medical clinic leaving, and with the police department going in, judicial building proposed for downtown. There's a great opportunity for redevelopment of that area, which would be Highland, Lytle Street, Manny Avenue. So we would like to conduct a land use study for that. And as Mr. Lyons had previously, I think Tuesday, had talked about a TIF district, maybe some type of incentives to help redevelopment in that area. That's the biggest probably increase in our budget. Other than that, I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time for the planning budget.
Any questions?
You're planning for a very ambitious year. Can you get all this done?
I don't think we can accomplish it in a year. We can start it, and it is a very ambitious project, but we have the downtown area the timing's right. We need to start on that. And more than likely, a study of that nature is going to take 2 years. By the time we do the land use study, do the cost analysis of the properties, figure out what would be the best use for those. Because a lot of that area, especially in the Highland area, was medical, to rezone it. So it typically will run about a 2-year period. But we can sure get started on it because we've had a lot of interest downtown. And I think the judicial building will just add to that. So it is ambitious, but I think I have the staff to do it.
And we think this, these are the kinds of things in this year's budget make a lot of sense. We're trying to show you a plan where we're really thinking strategically about tax incentives, strategically about an arts district, strategically about Lower Broadway, and then the comprehensive plan will finish up. We're trying to prepare us for many years to come, and it's efforts like this that really position us to think long term and not just the next 12 months.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Any questions for Mr. Whitaker? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Whitaker.
Thank you.
We'll move to the engineering department. You can find that on page 143.
Thank you, Mayor McFarland and members of the City Council. Whether it's repairing a failure in a roadway section, restoring a drainage system, or managing the design and construction of a major roadway project like Joe B. Jackson Parkway, the employees of the engineering department appreciate the opportunity to serve the residents of Murfreesboro, which I'm happy to say the last section of the Joe B. Jackson Parkway project was open, which was the bridge over CSX and Stones River, was open to traffic yesterday at about 11 a.m. and is being well used. I will say also that the project marked the swan song for one of the city's finest employees, Mr. Jeff Jaco, our senior roadway inspector, retires as of July 2nd, and he will be greatly missed. A review of our budget is dominated with our portion of the costs associated with grant-funded road projects. These projects include Middle Tennessee Boulevard, which bids are scheduled to be opened on Tuesday of this coming week. Cherry Lane Extension, which we're continuing engineering work on that. And the Bradeville Pike improvements, which we'll actually begin purchasing right-of-way in this coming fiscal year. The project does note that we are requesting funding of 2 additional positions, which includes an additional engineer for site plan reviews to help with the tremendous increase that Mr. Whitaker just mentioned that we've seen in the development community. We've also added an equipment operator to help with the growing number of stormwater maintenance projects that the street division is completing. Both of these projects will be partially funded by the stormwater user fee. We're also excited about a recent hire that we made with the facility maintenance supervisor, which will centralize a lot of the work that's currently being done on our buildings network. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions, along with our street superintendent, Mr. Raymond Hillis, is here, that you may have regarding our upcoming budget.
Mr. Lyons, we have greatly expanded our street repair in the last year. But there's still a lot to do. There's a lot of drainage ditches and pipes and things like that need to be worked on. Is there an opportunity to bump that up even more?
Certainly, how the council like to proceed in our capital improvement plan. The street department's going to have a particular focus in terms of replacing some equipment there that is more than well used and needs to be replaced. We want to continue to give Mr. Hillis and his team the resources to continue to do more work. He's really energized that section, and we're doing a lot more work in-house than we had done previously, and it shows. We're getting some great feedback from residents about how quickly we're addressing things. If you'd like, I can get with Mr. Hillis, and for your first meeting in June, we can take a look at that and see what we might recommend to you.
When a homeowner calls and complains about a ditch or a water easement or a pipe, and you can make a timely response and solve that problem, that person is very, very happy.
Yes.
And in a lot of cases, it takes a long time for these ditches to fill up and the washing and all that. And you know all this, and you know all this too. But to energize that a little more, and I know we're 100% of where we were 3 years ago, but let's move it up one more notch.
I received an email from a resident late Tuesday night and concerned about a condition of the street, and it was fixed today. They get on things quickly.
I saw an incident yesterday where a tree had fallen near a pole, and MED was called, and they had the tree cutters out there today fixing that situation. So a timely response is the best government.
I think you could even go a little further, that we had, I believe it was Mr. Newman that, had come and talked to us at the council meeting a while back about, he's the gentleman about the flags, lighting the flags. He had come up to me after the meeting and said, there's a manhole next to the Discovery Center. I'm going to trip on that. And I just emailed, we didn't even know where the manhole was. We just said, hey, it's somewhere around the Discovery Center, and get a picture that Raymond's crew had fixed that 2 days later. So, it's just phenomenal on what you guys are doing.
And I don't want you to think I'm being critical. This is a compliment. But now that we are making much better progress, let's move it on up a couple of more notches.
We'll come back to you first meeting in June with some ideas on that.
All right. Move to state street aid, page 155.
This is, state street aid includes the funding from the state fuel tax allocation and is based on the population within city limits. The engineering department oversees the majority of the maintenance projects completed with these funds, the largest of which, of course, includes our repaving budget, which is budgeted about $2.1 million this year. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have on that.
Mr. Lyons, we have looked at or are looking at it, or hopefully, if we haven't, we'll look at maybe bringing in the paving under our own control where we would have much more control as opposed to waiting to be last on the list.
We've given some thought to that. There's a significant capital investment for some of that equipment, but I'll be glad to sit down with Mr. Griffith and Mr. Hillis again to take a look at the work that's outsourced. If it would be better for us to tackle that in-house.
It seems like the only time we pave a street is between November the 1st and December the 18th. I don't know if that's true or not, but it sure seems that way. Y'all are both smiling, so I must have hit a nerve.
Certainly, the annual contractor does have other responsibilities. They're also the county's annual paving contractor, and they do a lot of work. They're currently working on the interstate now, so it's a scheduling. It takes some creative scheduling in order to make sure that we get our work done in a timely manner.
Is that something that we might look out of the box on for going?
Well, certainly one of the items that Mr. Lyons alluded to in the upcoming the upcoming budget, we're starting to build that team of that will allow us to do some paving, a better roller, for instance. It'll help us with our potholes, but also be very effective if we do make that step and actually purchase a paving machine and actually the crew to or hire the crew to run it. So it's just like on everything else, it's incremental steps. But we are heading that direction to where we'll be able to handle certain size projects on as needed.
You're beginning to go up that ladder, though.
Exactly.
Okay.
We did a 5-year projection in that. I think 17 was that what it was, Chris, that we had asking for the equipment necessary to be able to do that. So like you were saying, over the next 5 years, we want to be top notch.
Wouldn't it be amazing if we could start in April and pave till December? Thank you. Thank you for moving those road projects up, the drainage projects up, and the street projects, because I know that you've taken the responsibility and the authority to make in the field decisions to get things done, and that has greatly increased the ability to solve small problems that turn into big problems. Remember, a small problem in the consumer eye is a thorn in their eye, so you have to. I'm rambling. I'll sit down. Thank you, Mr. Griffin.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Griffith, thank you. We'll move to the Transportation Department. That's on page 136. Mr. Richardson.
Good evening, Mayor McFarland, members of council. Pleased to present to you this evening our FY16 budget. Our transportation department is made up of two distinct sections, one being the public transportation section, and the day-to-day operations in that section are headed up by Ms. Nellie Patton, and our traffic section, wherein our day-to-day operations are headed up by our traffic engineer, Mr. Ram Balachandra. We do have a great set of employees and appreciate certainly the hard work that all our team does to provide transportation services to the citizens of Murfreesboro. In our public transportation section, our budget's made up of really two components. Our operating expenses are about $1.5 million a year, and we have a small fixed asset of $114,000. So out of the $1.6 million in budget expenditures, about 80% of that is reimbursed or paid for by the state and federal government and other sources such as the firebox revenues, for instance, that come back from the passengers. In our accomplishments for this year, we have modified our system, our rover system. We'd made a presentation on that earlier to move from 30-minute headways to 45-minute headways, and I would report back that that has been, I think, well received by not only the citizens but certainly our drivers that do the day-to-day driving and provide the services directly to our passengers. And we're also nearing completion of the environmental study for our transit center that's been going on for some time, and we hope to have something presented to the Federal Transit Administration in relatively short order. In the longer term, we are now projecting that construction would maybe be in early 2017. There's still a lot of work to do in final design, right-of-way acquisition, and other federal procedures that we have to go through to get a project from paper to on the street. One of the biggest things I think that we're proud of is our rover ridership. We've increased yet again this year approximately 5%, and we've gone from about 265,000 riders in 2014 to approximately 278,000 individual trips in this fiscal year. So that has been very successful, and one of the things that we're very proud of is that for 8 consecutive years since the inception of our rover system, we have increased ridership. So that is a great trend by any standard. Some of our goals for the coming year is to actually, as I mentioned, complete the environmental study for a transit center and begin the final design process. And one of the things that's not in the narrative in our budget that we are working on as a goal is to revamp some of our ticket purchase options. Right now we sell those as tickets, or the riders pay cash on a daily basis. We're looking at some potential options such as weekly, monthly passes and some things of that nature that would make that more convenient to the public. And in the longer term, and not necessarily in this budget year, but in a longer sense, we're looking at going to some electronic fare collections and so forth to make it more convenient in this digital age. In our traffic section, we have had a good year, and we have certainly pursued some of our initiatives in last year's budget. And one of the big things that we were trying to do is replace our signalized intersections from the incandescent bulbs to the LED bulbs. We have a lot of those done, and of the current 141 signalized intersections, 96 or about 68% of these have now been converted, and we will continue on with that over the next year. Not only does that provide us a lot longer life for the signals, keeps the people changing bulbs, replacing bulbs, and so forth out of the intersection, but it would also save us ultimately a substantial amount of money that we pay for electricity each year to actually run these intersections. So that's one of the big goals. The other initiative is that we are not only including more so the pedestrian signalization and indications in our signalized intersections as they're built now, but we are going backwards and trying to retrofit a lot of the existing ones that we have on the street. So we went from about 21 or 26% of the signalized intersections that have pedestrian signals last year up to about 32% this year. So we are making progress. We are, some of those, the lack of a better term, the low-hanging fruit that doesn't take a lot of construction, but is putting up signal heads and doing some markings and so forth. We're knocking off some of those. We do have about 3 or 4 more intersections along Memorial that will be turned on in a working manner probably in the next few weeks. So staff's done a lot of work with that. And also, we're starting in earnest now. The beginning of the update of our major thoroughfare plan is a component of the comprehensive plan. That is an effort that's underway, and it's going to be extremely important to us to move beyond what we have now as a 2025 Horizon Year Major Thoroughfare Plan to a 2040. So that will set the stage for our transportation planning and projects for many years to come. And as far as some of our other goals that we are looking at, and that is really the continuation of some of the things we talked about as far as completing the retrofit of the traffic signals, keeping on pursuing the change to put the pedestrian signals up, and on some of our road projects, new things we are looking at, the Stonesboro Greenway Phase 4A and B. That's kind of a joint project between us, engineering, and Parks and Recreation. So we have a lot of joint work that we're doing to get those to move forward. And a lot of other projects, Mr. Griffith mentioned that, of course, the Middle Tennessee Boulevard project. We're glad, certainly, to have that project out for bid. And I know there's a lot of people that will be glad to see that started, or maybe not started, but they would certainly be glad to see it completed. And we will move on with the other road projects that we have underway, consisting of the Cherry Lane Braidwell Pike, and also have a joint project with the Department of Transportation being widening of a section of State Route 96 from Overall Creek to Veterans Parkway. That's an overview of some of the things we've been working on and are pursuing, and would be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Mayor, I might just add one comment to Mr. Richardson's presentation. Given the amount of work that he accomplishes, I've talked to the TDOT commissioner and the chief engineer at TDOT, and they could not be more complimentary of Mr. Richardson, his record keeping, his professionalism, because some of these road projects are complex with multiple funding sources. And Mr. Richardson, if you went in his office, will pull a binder off of his shelf and be able to, in a moment's notice, point to exactly where the money is and the history behind it. Having said all that, I did include a assistant transportation director position in the budget. We hope we hold on to him as long as we can, but from a succession planning standpoint and a workload standpoint, there is a new position in the transportation department as well.
Any questions for Mr. Richardson? Dan, great job.
Y'all let me off easy. Thank you very much.
Well, come on back up. We'll move to the Urban Environmental Department. That's on page 161.
Mayor, members of the council, pleasure to be here this evening as always. I'll be presenting both the Urban Environmental and the Civic Plaza for you. I wanted to begin with the Urban Environmental Department. Some of our departmental goals that we have listed for fiscal year 2016 is install phase 5, and it might be 5.5 now, of the trees in the historic downtown area. We did take a little bit of a hit from the ice storm there, so we may be prolonging that, but eventually we will be getting all the dead, dying, and diseased locust trees out and new trees in. Continuation of the Community Landscape Awards, that's proven to be, we kind of resurrected that program, and there's many, many, many commercial, industrial, residential areas that people take such great pride in their landscaping, and we love recognizing them. And then when we contact them and, put the sign out and take their picture, you see a lot of civic pride there. We are going to be beginning a new project called Phase 1 of the Medical Center Parkway Street Tree Replacement Program. I don't know if you've noticed, it's the maple trees in the old section of Medical Center Parkway. They went in fine. They've served us well for many years, but unfortunately, due to heat stress, freeze cracks, and then invasion of every kind of insect you can think of. They've succumbed, and it's time to start replacing those. It is a bit early for them, but they take a lot of heat stress out there, and we're going with a completely different tree. We're going to be funding that through our tree bank and not through our tree bank and not through taxpayer dollars. So we'll begin that this fall, hopefully. Kind of continue our ice storm damage replacements. I know many of you noticed the trees down. Middle Tennessee actually took a pretty big, no pun intended, hit there with downed trees, but so we'll be really launching into a replacement program there as well. And then we'd like to continue and increase our what's turned into be a very popular program for us called Gardening in the City. And we're working with, of course, City Cable, and we try to do very educational sections and get guest speakers. We've had the state plant pathologist do one. We've had the state entomologist just do one. So very germane information, and the public really likes to tune in on that and find out about what's going on with fungus or insects or what have you. And we also like to visit other places and present new plants that you may use in your landscape when we have problems. It has been suggested by the state forester and those around us to start a monitoring program for the emerald ash borer. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this is a borer that is wreaking billions of dollars of damage throughout the nation. It's not unlike kind of like the chestnut blight, in that it does like the ash. So the key here is don't plant ash, but it's rather indiscriminate too on other things, and they suspect the damage in Tennessee alone to just be in the billions of dollars. So we'll set up a monitoring. It's all around us in counties now. But it really hasn't hit here, but they suspect that it will within the next year or so. So it's kind of sad, but we'll start a monitoring program there. And then, of course, we've got the Oakland's tree maintenance and replacement program that is ongoing for the boulevard trees going into Oakland's and any other trees there. So with that, is there any other questions on the urban environmental budget?
Okay, we'll move to Civic Plaza.
All right, let's move to City Plaza. No real big changes here. I would like to say, though, we were able to take $10,000 out of the budget with Raymond's help over the years. We have converted the what I would call supposedly dustless gravel surface into a hardscape now, and this is the last phase of it. And I think it was money well spent, and this has been going on for 4 years. Again, this will complete that phase, and it's ongoing right now. But just as a reminder, the city shares the expenses with the county. I think my numbers are right, but Melissa, I know, will help me out. City pays 58.5% and the county 41.5% of the Civic Plaza budget. So again, just some very slight increases for maintenance of the fountain, and a few other little small things. The water service was increased too, but other than that, it's pretty much status quo for the Civic Plaza.
Mr. Lyons, it seems to me that our Civic Plaza is just an outstanding opportunity that's not being fully developed. I don't know, she just takes care of it, but I think we need a brainstorm or something to figure out things that we could do in the Civic Plaza.
I couldn't agree with you more. it is a great space. It looks good, it feels good, it's convenient. You can park under it. And how we can attract more events. Certainly there's been a number of events that are held there. We see folks out on the plaza with some regularity, but how can we attract some more musical events? Pardon me?
Skateboarders.
Well, we've got plenty of those. We need to keep brainstorming, Mayor.
Well, I'm saying they are out there.
Yeah,
I watch
they are.
them from my window. It's good entertainment.
That's a favorite spot up there.
I think that's a great idea. We need to find some ways to attract more groups there. I know, in the past, Jazz Fest had put a concert stage on the plaza. Now they've moved it to the corner of the square, and that's been, very well received. I don't know that we need to make a change back to the plaza, but maybe we can look at marketing and doing some outreach to get some groups on the plaza, because it is a great space for folks to come to.
And Councilman Young, I will say that we've actually probably we probably have as many applicants now as we're not through, that have submitted through September than we've had in a long time. I mean, it seems like the use has sort of picked up. We've got a new event coming on put on by the young professionals I'm excited about, called the Ice Cream Bowl. So that's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to that event.
When is
there.
that?
Pardon?
When is that?
It is in September. I can't remember the exact date. I'm sorry, but I can get that for you. But I know Mr. Crumley worked with the Young Professional Group, and they're very excited about it. It's kind of a new event for us.
Well, that just ties into everything we're doing downtown.
Mm-hmm.
It just...
We'll reach out to Ms. Herzog and see what we can do.
Yep. Anything else?
Ms. Holloway, you make us all look good. When you come into Murfreesboro, you see your handiwork.
Thank you, Councilman.
And I know you don't make a lot of noise, but you sure make a lot of difference.
Well, thank you. I certainly appreciate that. And kudos to staff, too, because they work very diligently keeping the city properties up and maintaining rights of way and everything. So we all appreciate that. Thank you.
That's a lady's touch.
Absolutely. If I was in charge of it, it'd look like a bunch of steel painted gray. Is he coming back up? Oh, no.
Okay, we'll move to the parking garage. Mr. Crumley.
Mayor, I'm going to take you from parking garage through the gateway, and not to steal Mr. Gore's thunder, but I have a few brief slides when we get to the debt service fund to show. Let me reference you to page 171 for parking garage. And in that tabular presentation, the very low right-hand corner, $25,700 is the increase in the parking garage budget for next year proposed. That is a one-time project to convert the existing wet sprinkler system in the garages to a dry sprinkler system. If you've been in the building at the time that someone has hit with a vehicle one of the pipes downstairs, you'll know exactly why. Well, this is one of the reasons we want to do this. The other is it is a long-term maintenance savings to go from the wet to the dry system. The parking garage is 2/3 city, 1/3 county, so that is a shared expense. If there are no questions, I will move you to page 221. This is the non-departmental account. This is where things that do not fit well in other places get allocated to. If you look at that, again, matrix on the very bottom of 221, you will see the array of items that make out this budget of nearly $2.1 million. Everything from our reserve for taxes that are uncollectible, that's property taxes that are uncollectible, to our contribution from the city's mixed drink tax, to the city and county school systems, to our wellness incentive that we offer employees. You'll see some numbers in there that represent fairly large amounts. The last large number, of course, is our unforeseen. We allocated $500,000 there for the inevitable things that will occur during the next year that we just can't predict for you now. This budget is down nearly $1 million from last year.
With that great decrease, is that putting anything in jeopardy?
No, sir. That was the money that we allocated in anticipation of the classification and compensation study having come to us a little earlier.
Okay. Mr. Crumley?
Now, if I can get Michael to switch us over to the computer screen,
Y'all notice
please.
how Mr. Crumley just takes the agenda over? We'll now move to the debt service fund, page 222. Okay, Mr. Crumley.
Not that we don't spend a lot of our daytime hours here in the building, but figuring you would like to move along.
No, we're here. We're here to serve.
I have 8 slides to kind of help us understand the debt service budget. We'll be prepared to go through the debt service budget in much greater level of detail at the time that you sit to consider the capital improvement plan. We haven't got that on your calendars yet, but I think we're ready to present. And as soon as we can get it scheduled with you all, we'll be glad to show you in more detail the numbers. This graphic is the last 10 years of the city's outstanding debt obligation. In 2016, with the proposed issuance of $73.5 million in new debt, the city's total outstanding debt would be about $254 million at the end of FY16. We've had this year some opportunity to find information from other communities. Oops, I skipped one. There we go. This pie chart represents where the money has been spent from your previous bond issues. This is actually 2-year-old data. This slide has not been updated yet, but you can see that roughly half of the money the city has borrowed over the last 15 years has gone towards building new streets and improving existing streets, approximately 20% to public safety, 10% to recreation, and smaller amounts for schools, public works, and other items. This year we've had the advantage of having Moody's database of Tennessee cities to kind of do some benchmarking with. Here are the 11 cities that we think are very comparable to Murfreesboro in certain aspects. And we're going to look at some of those 11 cities and how they relate to us in different ways. You'll notice that there are 3 cities rated AAA at the top of that list, followed by Bartlett, and then a group of cities, including Murfreesboro, at Moody's rating of AA2. One of the first measures in your all's financial policies is the charter-imposed debt limitation of 15% of assessed value. The orange on the bottom represents the actual debt that has been issued by the city. The blue is the 15% line. You can see we're at roughly 50% of our debt capacity as measured by that charter reference. The 2016 year does include the proposed $73.5 million issue. One of the other things we look at is how rapidly does the city pay off debt. Only two other Tennessee cities pay off debt more rapidly than does Murfreesboro. Those 2 cities, Bartlett and Collierville, have both just entered the city school business. All of this data is 2014 data from Moody's. I guess what I'm suggesting is that Bartlett and Collierville, as they begin to incur debt for a city school system, their numbers are going to change very significantly as we go forward in years with this presentation. Our policy of 15-year debt, our policy of capturing items that have shorter lifespans, primarily equipment and vehicles, and financing them on an even shorter term, generally 7 years or less, is why we pay off debt so rapidly as compared to these other cities. I'd point out to you that the orange bar is actually your policy that you've adopted. The blue bar is the actuals for those communities across the state. The orange bar is the policy that you've adopted. You can see we're well above the policy levels that you've established for us. Because we pay off debt so rapidly, we are the second highest community, the debt service budget as related to the overall budget. We're currently paying out close to 16% of the annual budget in principal and interest. Only one community, and that is also the very rapidly growing community of Franklin, is even close to us in that number. Most of these communities have chosen to issue 30-year debt, and as such, the percentage in their annual budgets is much, much lower than ours. Again, 33% is your policy benchmark that you've established. This budget that's presented to you tonight is between 15 and 16% going to principal and interest, going to debt service. Another one of your policy measures is the direct debt as a percentage of full value of real estate in the community. Ours is the third highest. We're even with Cleveland and behind Kingsport in terms of that measure. We're well within our policy measure, and with the new construction that we see in the pipeline, we believe this ratio will only continue to improve. Another one of your chosen measures is debt per capita. Again, the orange bar is your policy guideline. You can see we are, again, close to the top of that line, but again, well below the target that you've set for us. And you have seen 8 slides on debt. We have much more information to present, but we'll hold that back to the CIP if that's okay with you all.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes, sir.
If you go back to maybe the second slide, I think, it was how much we were going to be paying off in the next 10 years?
Yes.
Was that just principal? Can you get to that slide?
You would only measure this as the principal amount, yes.
It looked like it was about 80% up here. In our literature, it says it's 91%.
I'm going straight off of Moody's numbers. I do not know why there is a disparity. I noticed that disparity also. But however Moody's chose to measure our principal and interest payments, they came back with that 80% number. We truly believe it is closer to 90. I don't know if they excluded some of our debt. You've got a very small taxable airport loan. You've got some energy loans that are zero interest rates through the school systems. I don't know if they chose to exclude those. I haven't been able to reconcile the differences in those numbers yet.
There be some difference in some.
This is Moody's data.
Would they be making some assumptions as to what the variable, how much, what the variable rate might be?
Right. I think so. The debt service budget has $1.9 million roughly in it as an increase for the proposed $73.5 million worth of borrowings next year. You'll notice that the net is only up about $700,000 due to roll-off of debt from previous years. Net increase in that budget, $714,000.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Crumley. We'll now move into the Capital Improvement Fund, page 243.
Page 245, if you will, maybe a little easier. You can see an increase here of just out $1.5 million on the revenue side, a little over $6 million on the expense side. To explain the revenue side, that is this year's county bond proceeds for schools that we'll have before June 30th. The expenditures to match those will be in the next fiscal year. When you look at the $6,128,000 proposed there, that's really 2 sets of school projects. One, the next expansion at Hobgood. The second, an energy improvement project at 2 city schools. Again, these dollars don't really impact our operating budget. They are flow-through dollars from county bond proceeds from the past.
Okay, any questions? All right, we'll move to the bond fund, page 246.
The bond fund is where the city expenses the dollars for its capital projects. Again, if I'll take you to page 248, you can see that the bond fund is proposed at $105.3 million. That is made up of the projects in the proposed $73.5 million bond issue, plus roughly $30 million of prior year's borrowings for projects that you have already approved that are now moving to construction. But this is completely a flow-through account. The dollars are from either past debt or future debt, and all funded towards capital projects. Again, when we go through the capital improvement plan with you, the new $73.5 million we can go through in great detail.
Of course, the 73 is tentative because we've got to go through that CIP
That is correct.
program.
The numbers won't sit still. The numbers keep moving a little bit, and the last number we had, I think, was 73.5.
Okay. All right, we'll move to page 158, which is the Gateway Department. It's
Here at the Gateway, you'll see that the budget has increased from $30,000 to $180,000. That $150,000 increase is in anticipation of dollars the city will have to spend primarily for the fountains at Gateway. There are certain real estate commitments we have made in that transaction where the city will have to do some earthwork to the site, and this is the budget that we've established in anticipation of that.
Okay. Any questions? You're not going to do the senior citizen budget, are you?
Although I qualify.
All right. We'll move to the senior citizen budget, page 183. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and staff. Appreciate having you listen to our stories about our seniors in the community at St. Clair Center. We represent the 60-plus in the city of Murfreesboro and Rutherford County, and the programs that we produce look at the aspect of social services that we provide to our seniors, the quality of life that they have in our community. We look at a lot of aspects of trying to keep them very active and motivated to be great partners in the community and the services that we provide. Over the next year, we're looking at several things that we want to bring forward, that we are presenting some evidence-based programming that really truly see some results in seniors' activities. One program that we're wanting to present is a Step On program. It's about fall prevention. As soon as a senior has a fall of any kind, you start seeing aspects of them withdrawing from life, whether it be activities, church, community activities. So we want to look at a way that we can address that by sending some of our staff through that training. We're also looking at one of the greatest needs that our community is facing is caregiving. Our seniors and their families are dealing with more and more the aspects of parents needing caregiving needs. It has landed in the top 3, right next to nutrition, transportation needs for seniors, the need for caregivers and services and resources for them. So we're looking at sending some of our staff to do a dementia basic and powerful tools for caregivers trainings this year for our staff so that they can better serve our community and the questions that we are asked in that topic. We also are looking at improving some of our resources in our programming, providing more education services, more health promotion services, physical fitness programs. Doing that, we're I'm charging our staff to present more and more programs using technology, the aspects of using computers with the Senior Learning Network, doing some telecommunications with other programs around the U.S. that are presenting programs that are excellent or one of a kind. We recently spent an afternoon with some folks in Australia via the internet. The seniors were able to ask about the history and the challenges of seniors there in that community, and also ask about some of the things that are the fun sides of maybe not being able to travel there and being on your bucket list, but we'll be able to go there via the internet. So some of those things sound fun, but are absolutely providing a lifelong learning education for a lot of our citizens. This last year, our accomplishments have been very well. We sent off all of our paperwork for accreditation to the Washington, D.C. We're hoping that the first of the year we will have a visit from those folks, that they'll be able to come by and actually certify us in that area. We actually had a staff member that was nominated as the ambassador for the state of Tennessee, went to Washington, D.C. Cindy Thomas does an excellent job in our social services and Alzheimer's side of our facility. She was a great representative to go up and speak on the behalf of citizens here, not only in Tennessee, but Rutherford County and Murfreesboro, on the behalf of the needs to have more dollars put towards Alzheimer's, looking at the effects on families, work, the folks that are here and caring for those individuals. We have individuals within their city departments that have parents that are suffering with this, and they're losing work time. How do we work with them and help them to gain ways and more education on doing those projects? We also are working a lot on how we're seen in the community. We're looking at our marketing tools. It's one of the areas that I'm asking for an increase in the upcoming year, is to look at that marketing tool of how we can better market the services that the Senior Center provides. We also are looking for and have a great social service department. Dee Brown is over that program, and she does an excellent job. She's been with us for many, many years. She has a wonderful way of helping seniors to find the social services that are available in the city, throughout the state. I'll give you an example. She met with one of our veterans that comes to the center quite often. She sat down with him, and not too long after into the conversation, she found out that he was very tight on funds. One of those of paying his meds, paying other things in everyday life. She asked him if he knew about a program that the VA offered for vets about getting some income into his finances. He had no clue. He'd been probably eligible for 10 years of about $900 a month that he could have got into his finances. And through the help with that service program, she was able to fill out the paperwork for him and get that financing into his hands. You don't see a gentleman cry that often, but he had tears in his eyes, thanking her for being able to provide that service. And he would have never known. He would have never known. The service that we provide hits several areas. We look for resource information in the community, education, physical fitness, health promotion, of course, recreation. We also provide nurse on duty services to help those seniors discuss their chronic conditions. Chronic conditions for the 60 plus is very severe. Most seniors have at least 6 chronic conditions that affect their living ability to do their daily activities. And so if we can, in our social services and our staff, be able to have better knowledge and better training in that area, we'll do a better job at servicing them. In our budget, we are asking for one additional staff person in the upcoming year. That staff person will be working as in our front office, intaking new participants. We had over 750 new seniors that started participating in the center in this last year. They will work with them on finding out what services that they are interested in and want to have provided by the center. They'll also work with them on what would be more recreational, is their love and need to still travel and still be active. Travel for seniors is one of those last kind of bucket list type items. They like to do travel with a group. They don't want to plan anymore. They don't want to make the decision of where to go to eat or to buy the tickets or anything. They do enjoy for us to do that for them. So that is a service area I think that we will provide in the upcoming year. Overall, the Senior Center provided right at 150,000 units of service last year. Those individuals come on a regular basis. We look at providing information out to individuals through our LEAF. If you've not taken a chance to read through that, that goes out monthly. It's usually a 22 to 24 page of wealth of knowledge of information that affects seniors. That knowledge and information comes all the way down from the state of Tennessee, from National Council on Aging in Washington. So we really try really hard to make sure that our seniors are well educated on the services that are available to them. If you have any questions or anything about my budget, I'd be glad to address them.
Mayor, Mr. Washington and I have the fortunate to serve on her board, and it's an extremely busy place over there, and Madeline also. It's an extremely busy place, and a lot of really good things are going on over there. So we just need to make sure that she has what she needs.
Because you're a senior, you're asking.
Well, is that a conflict of interest? Do we need a ruling on that, Ms. McGann?
It's okay.
Birth certificate.
I can lie like everybody.
All right, any questions?
But thank you for what you do.
Great job.
Thank you so much for what you
We
do.
have great staff over there.
And that place does stay full.
It does.
gone over there
Parking
a
is
couple of
always an
times.
issue. You probably hear
Always
about
a problem
that.
parking. You're right.
Yeah, it is.
All right, we'll move to the public golf course department. Okay, 195, page 195. Mr. Wilkins looking sharp tonight, as usual.
Mayor, I appreciate all the tips. I put them all in play for you. Belt matches the shoes. I'm good to go. Mayor, members of council, I just appreciate the opportunity to come present the budget tonight. To touch on a couple of things, the start to the year with the winter that we had and the rain that's been going on, we were not very optimistic early on, but I'm pleased to say that our projections that we did early on for the budget are going to be on the low side. We're doing March, April, and May have all been up for us, and we're hoping that June will continue that way. Play has been going well so far. All of our associations, the Men's Association, our ladies group, our senior group, all of those participants, the numbers are up in all of those areas as well, as far as not just participation, but also the people that are members of those associations. It's been really good. We were able to host in April the Southern Athletic Association Men's and Women's Golf Championships. 8 men's and 8 women's teams from across the Mid-South, and we have secured them for a fall event in September, and they have signed with us again to have their 2016 championships at Old Fort again next year, so we're pleased for that. This will be our 5th year to host the MTSU Women's Golf Team Invitational, and they'll have about 15 teams from across the country. If you've been keeping up with the Lady Raiders, they had a great year. They had their first chance to go to the NCAA regionals, and they had an individual for the first time in school history, a young lady, Emily Williams, went to the NCAA Nationals. So proud to have them associated with our city and our golf course. Proud to announce that starting next week, we will have a new course in town. And at no cost, so that's a good thing. But we're going to be introducing a family course, yardage course that we're putting out new tees and things at a shorter yardage. It'll be about 3,400 yards for people that are transitioning from our new Bloomfield facility over to the big course, and it's something that we haven't had before, and that will be exciting for the people just taking up the game and some of our youngsters transitioning over. Also, at the VA, proud to announce, too, that the foot golf is still going strong. That has been one of our better investments. We have good participation there. We've had our first actual tournament there that was scheduled by an outside group last month, and that went well. So play there is going well. Also, our junior league at Bloomfield, I'm so excited about it. Last year we had 82 kids signed up in our junior league, and this year by July we will have touched over 200. Wow. We have entered into agreement a couple years ago with a gentleman to come on and do some teaching for us. This year we've entered into an agreement with someone to take over our junior golf and youth development, and he's not been here 2 months, and we're already that far ahead, and it is going outstanding. We will be, starting next week, we'll be working with the blessing of the city schools. We'll be touching, going into 5 of the elementary schools and working with ESP programs, and that will be over 100 students there that we'll be touching in the next 5 to 6 weeks. Also, I know that coming up, the city schools will be coming up, and they do a lot of in education and a lot of training and stuff, and they go really out on the limb to get some high quality people in to do some of their in-service. And I was proud to be one of those people last year to do one of the in-services for the PE teachers on the new Snag golf program. So either they're hurting for things to do or they're finally noticing some things that need to be taught. But it was really great, and we have some of those teachers that are helping us out in the ESP program this summer also. And lastly, we have secured a grant from Christy Houston to be able to start in on our new on a building to be put over at Bloomfield that'll serve for restroom facilities, storm shelter, and also some storage for our equipment or whatever. So we'll be starting on that. Actually, we're digging a test hole to see what's underneath the ground in the morning at 9 o'clock. So excited about that. And we had a retiree last year, Mr. Joseph McAlpin, had been with us over 25 years, retired. From a budget standpoint, the only major increase that we have in any section of the budget is for operation and maintenance of that section for Old Ford, and it deals with operation and maintenance of vehicles and also of buildings, and it's about a $7,000 increase in that whole section. Otherwise, everything seems to be pretty much in line with what was going on the year before. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Tracy, I'm going to just mention that I appreciate what you guys are doing, and I've gotten involved with it and kind of know it a little more intimately now. And, from what I've seen, what's happening in the golf world, there's not a huge increase in the number of rounds that are being played in the golf world, and you guys have kind of taken an extra step, and instead of just saying, well, it just is what it is, they've brought on foot golf, the soccer golf. I'm not talking about Jim Crumley foot golf. I'm talking about, with the soccer ball.
Those are mulligans.
The foot golf, which is we've had a great return on the investment there, which was a very little investment. The Bloomfield Links, I'd say it. I mean, if you have any kids in your life or anybody who's new to golf, I mean, for $5 you can go over there and get some real golf in and hit it to a green and putt it into a hole. I mean, like it's just like a real round. I mean, it's a great way to spend a little time. So, and your budget sort of reflects those things, and putting the youth guy into place, I think, is going to help out for the future. So it's good stuff.
If you have a chance to check it out, check us out on Facebook. Also, we've posted some video there where we had our inaugural draft day for the kids on teams and stuff, and they just had the best time with that. And I'd like to take an opportunity too to tell you introduce that we, if you mention golf in Murfreesboro anywhere around here for the last 30 or 40 years, the name Gene Dixon will come up, the golf pro that was at the country club forever. And it's been a friend of mine ever since that I've been here. And we had dinner with him one night, and we've been trying to put together something for a year or so, and he gave us his blessing to use his name. But we're going to start this year a new junior golf event that this year is going to be our city championship, but it's going to grow into a mid-state, maybe a statewide invitational. And Gene's nickname is Big Daddy, and if you know Gene, he's a big man. And our junior event is going to be called the Big Daddy Junior Invitational, and it'll be sometime in late July or August. But 26th of next month, we're going to be having the Big Daddy Golf Classic, which will be the fundraising arm for our junior golf and also for this junior golf event that we're going to start in his name. And we're proud to be associated with Mr. Dixon and his family.
That's awesome. Great job.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move to the airport fund, page 231.
Mayor and members of the City Council, thank you for this opportunity to come before you with the airport budget. We're extremely busy this time of year. We're under 24 hours of construction at this time. We are shutting down at night for construction on the infield portion of the airfield. Typically this time of year, summertime, MTSU is at a really slow rate in their operations. Typically in the summertime, we have 30 students that are still flying. Last year there was 60. This year there's 80 to 100 students that are flying in the program, all while we're under 24 hours of construction. So the balancing act is extremely important, and we're trying to pull it off the best we can. This budget is focused heavily on the runway construction project. While that will come to an end before the MTSU is back in session in the end of August, there'll be some continued work that will continue on the airfield into September, and there will be the follow-up paperwork that deals with all the grants that will follow probably into the wintertime before that project and all those folders are closed out. While that is exciting and a lot of the departments come to you with a lot of very positive things, this budget had a little foreshadowing in its narrative regarding state funding. And a huge concern that has hit the airports across Tennessee is that the Tennessee Equity Fund is being changed. And when we come to you with projects that are 90-95% funded, the Equity Fund is going to have a cap over the next 4 years on it, and will bring our state from about a $48 million grant equity fund that we draw from to about maybe 10 to 20. 10 being into the General Aviation Airport Fund. So this is going to change our look, and we're going to have to work with the Airport Commission to prioritize and look at how we fund future development of our projects at our airport. Other businesses are doing well at the airport. Our ramp is almost completely full right now because of some of the success of the businesses that are out the field, bringing in a lot of transient aircraft, not only from Middle Tennessee, but all over the country to do work. After we get through the runway, the focus will be on some future development. The north field, the old soccer fields, we'll be looking at planning that area out for utilities and how future ramps and taxiways and hangars will be laid out. We'll also be taking a look at the design and future construction and all that of a terminal building. So with that, I'd open any questions that you might have about the airport fund.
Any questions for Mr. Gerke?
Should have asked him about his personnel.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mr. Gerke. All right, we'll move to community development, page 189. Mr. Calloway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Funds for the Community Development Department come from two sources: Community Development Block Grant that the city receives directly from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and an Emergency Solutions Grant that is HUD money funneled to the city through the Tennessee Housing Development Agency. Murfreesboro's Community Development Block Grant for the year beginning July 1 is $742,500. $567. That's a decrease of $13,104 from last year. The department will also have available for the next budget year the carry forward of any current CDBG funds that have not been expended by June 30th and any program income generated in the next program year through the repayment of loans made using CDBG funds. In the budget document, both of these numbers are estimates, and we will adjust those and come back to you with a final budget when the final carry forward number is determined after we get everything closed out early in the next budget year. The community development budget, beginning on page 187, reflects the priorities and initiatives identified in our 2015 to 2020 consolidated plan and the 2015-2016 first-year action plan. You approved those documents on May 7th, and they were submitted to HUD for review the following morning. We have a picture of me pushing the button. It was a great day after 6 months of work on that consolidated plan. Our CDBG funds for 2015-16 will be used to support our core programs, that is assistance to income-eligible first-time home buyers, housing rehabilitation for single-family residences occupied by income-eligible homeowners, property acquisition, and public service activities. For the next year, you've authorized 15 grants to agencies that will provide direct services to income-eligible residents of Murfreesboro. Additionally, CDBG funds are used to cover the administrative expenses of the Community Development Department. Our Emergency Solutions Grant allocation for 2015-16 is $224,238. These funds are, in turn, granted to nonprofit agencies providing direct services to the homeless and those in danger of becoming homeless. You approved our proposed allocations of those funds on March 5th. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Callow? Okay, thank you, Mr. Callow. All right, we'll now move into Fleet Services, page 256.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to present our budget for this year this evening. It's been a busy year. Since the 1st of July, Fleet Service Department, we've completed over 3,700 work orders on 594 different pieces of equipment. So having said that, on page 256, really the only significant change in our budget, we are proposing the addition of a chief mechanic to help schedule and prioritize the repairs, and the addition of an additional heavy equipment technician, which will change our personnel from 13 to 14. Might also mention that we had a longtime employee, Bobby Davis, retired back in January. When he was a lead mechanic, but we replaced him with a mechanic. If you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Hite? Thank you so much. All right. You have the city schools. It's on in a separate notebook. Dr. Gilbert, great to see you.
Thank you, sir. Great to see you.
Also have your trusted sidekick with you, Mr. Anderson.
He explains all the numbers. I just tell you the why. Thank you so much for letting us come, and let me tell you how much I appreciate your support. I appreciate Mr. Washington being our liaison. He always has wisdom to give us. So many of you have been supportive of our foundation and other events. I see you when our children are there, you're there, and I really appreciate that. I'm not going to go through all of the points of pride of the school district. I know you want to get out before next year, but I will tell you that it's been a year when we've had a lot of school systems who have come to see what we're doing because they think we're doing things right. It's been a year in which we've been able to touch a lot of children's lives and families' lives, and I think you'll be hearing about that on various news media over the next couple of days. It's been a year when we've seen tremendous growth, more growth really than we've seen at any time in the history of the district. If you look at last year's budget numbers and our projection, this year's budget numbers, you're looking at a growth of about 10.8% as far as number of students. We did not expect that, so that means that we hired a lot of teachers. It's been a year when I think you've seen the reasoning when you've looked at other school districts that we came to you and we asked you for technology purchases, because right now other school districts are going through the throes and the pains of having to ask their funding bodies for that. And so thank you for letting us being ahead of the game of that. I'm going to turn this over to Gary and let him talk to you and answer any questions you have. I will tell you that this budget is built primarily on what I think makes a real difference in a district, and that's the talent of people. So if we're going to grow as much as we have grown and project what we are going to do in the future, then it means people. It's also a budget, I think, that responds to change. If there's anything that you know about education, it's certainly that we are undergoing great change. And we've been blessed over the past years to be able to project that change, and I think that's what we're trying to do again here today. So thank you so much for letting us be here, and I'm going to turn it over to Gary.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Good evening. Thank you for letting us present to you about our budget. I want to kind of emphasize what Linda said about growth. Last month, we grew 32 additional students. That's extremely rare to do at this late in the school year. We have grown from the beginning of school, this school year, to the end of school, 233 students during the time school was going on. That our normal growth rate for a whole year is 145 for the last 26 years. This year was totally different. We were so far above where we had thought we would be. We are right now within 344 students already of where we expect to be by the start of next year. So we've already, with the additional growth, it's actually impacted our budget for next year already in that we have gotten to a point right now in students more than we thought we'd be at this date, and that's basically because of the most recent growth. We covered all the additional teachers we had to hire this year on our fund balance dollars that we had. We were able to do that and get us through the year. Our revenue picture for next year, it's still in flux because the state has yet to determine the final BEP, the Basic Education Program numbers. We still don't have the total information from the county yet on what our number will be as far as the ADA, the average daily attendance difference between the county and us, because we get paid a percentage of the county taxes based on the number of students we educate versus what the county educates. We also have not received all the total growth funds that we should get for this current year because we grew so much. Growth monies is established by the state as a fixed amount that they set for the whole statewide, and we are getting a very nice share of that money. The issue we had was a year ago they had $30 million in that growth pool. This year they cut it down to $15 million, and next year they're cutting it down to $10 million. So they keep lowering the pool amount to spread, so that gives us some concern. Fortunately, though, we still anticipate some additional growth money coming from the state, and that won't come to us until July. The BEP number won't come till July, and then the county tax rate, we won't know that until they pass a county tax rate. So we have those additional things that we'll be looking for. We do anticipate having to bring back budget resolutions to you after the fiscal year starts because of these additional numbers that we're looking at. We are also asking this year for you to contribute to the program that you give to us now an additional $500,000 in our operating expense. You all have been absolutely wonderful on our capital expenditures, building schools, the computers. When we opened up Overall Creek, that added $1.5 million to our operating expenses, and so we're asking for an additional $500,000 this year in the revenue. On the expenditures, Dr. Gilbert is an expert, a pro at spending money. I just want you to know that.
But I'm conservative and I'm cheap, so keep talking.
She is the best at knowing how to spend money. So what is in the expenditure size, and I have in your notebook, the first 3 pages are the information for you based on each department and their expenditures. And what it is the additional things for staffing, supplies, and equipment. Things like, with more students, we've got to buy more buses. We've got to hire more bus drivers. We've got to have additional teachers. We've got to have additional support area staff. So all those things are in there in the improvements section of it. The other piece of the budget is the extended school program, and we're not proposing any rate increase in the extended school program, and that program is self-sufficient. It takes care of itself. There's no money put in by the district for that. And the school nutrition program, we're getting all kinds of coverage on TV right now for our summer program feeding, and our community eligibility has provided every student in the district with breakfast and lunch at no cost to the students, and we will continue that. We have that from the federal government established for at least a 3-year minimum, and that's the program we're in. So there is no additional cost to anyone on that, and that program also is self-sufficient. So that's pretty much a overview of what we have in the budget. We'd be glad to answer any of the questions you might have, and Dr. Gilbert's more than happy to do that.
Dr. Gilbert, what do you feel like, when will we be looking for our next school site?
Well, we're looking right now. We have in your capital outlay and your improvement plan, we're looking at adding on classrooms to Hobgood, and then the next year adding on to Black Fox, and then we're projecting the next year. Where that will be, we're not sure, because we're waiting to see what happens with growth. But that's right now what we're projecting. If we hold with the kind of growth we've had, we feel like we'll need that. Overall, right now, is at what?
They're right now at 675.
Yeah, they're at 675, and that's a 1,000-student school. We feel like that when we add on, we'll be adding 10 classrooms onto Hobgood. Feel like that'll relieve some of John Pittard, some of Hobgood. Both of those are jam-packed. And then we feel like with Black Fox, that will help us too with some of that relief. We're not sure what's going to happen out on the Manchester Highway out that way. So we feel like that our timeline is pretty good right now. Now, if we come in with the kind of growth that we had this year, then we'll be having a problem, because we had 600. How many more students did we? Go ahead.
We had almost 500 additional students, but we reduced our pre-K program by 5 classrooms, which reduced 100 students. So our actual growth was in K-6 students.
So that was the surprise. We really thought with the rezoning, because we rezoned everything, and we really thought that would give us some relief, particularly at Pittard, and they feel right back up. In fact, I waited about hiring extra teachers, because I thought, well, maybe we're duplicating students. Maybe the same students we're seeing at Pittard are already at Reeves Rogers, but that was not the case.
Dr. Gilbert,
Sure.
where are these children coming from? Is it?
Sir, that has been the question that we have been asking all year. We had originally thought it was just refilling of empty houses, and I think that's been part of it. But when I talked to remember I said that I thought we were seeing duplication? When I talked to principal, we're talking about out of state, a lot of them. So they are new folks coming in from what we saw.
Is any component of it, are counties folks allowed, I guess would be the right word, are they allowed to come? I think when we talked about...
We have some double zone, and so some of the ones that you're seeing at Overall in particular, I think, are some of the county where you have duplicate zone. But the rest of them with Pittard and some of those other areas, we're just not seeing that. And you can correct me, you're the zoning fellow, but that's what we're seeing and talking with principals.
I mean, out of those during the current year, we feel like the vast majority of those are moving new citizens, so it's no new residents?
Any questions?
Thank you all so
Dr. Gilbert,
much.
thank you very much.
It's a real pleasure to be here.
Mr. Anderson, thank you so much.
Thank you all for coming. She'll go back to work.
Well, we're going to save the best for last, and if everyone will go ahead and get their PowerPoint presentation ready.
Thank you all very much. Do we need to stretch? Everybody need a break for a second here? Thank you for the opportunity to come before you tonight and consider the water and sewer fiscal year 16 budget. This has been presented to the Water and Sewer Board, and I did send a link out if you have the Prezi presentation app loaded, or if you've got a Windows-based computer, you can follow along real time.
When I
So
hit
this-
that button, I got a call from Chris Lilly, the NSA, and the FBI. Something went crazy. I don't know what you sent me. but-
And I think I need to, yeah, okay, I need to get
It
this.
didn't work.
It didn't work? Well,
It was blocked.
really? Oh, you couldn't get on the Prezi website?
Just FYI, yeah.
Okay, well,
He has it
I
anyway.
copied Chris in, so hopefully, well, we'll,
It's a conspiracy.
but we're probably reaching max technical capacity here pretty soon, but wanted to take you through a quick, it's a pretty substantial budget, but I wanted to take you through the different elements of it, the monetary components and some goals and objectives. We've gone through the rate design with you before. It's been a good declining, I guess, 5-year rate design. We expected in FY14 to have about $12.44 over a 5-year period. With the introduction of AMI and the fact that our capital improvement projects came in under budget, we're looking at about $4.50. We just passed. We're in that third year on that far right corner, 50 cents on the 5/8 inch residential meters, so a 50-cent increase on monthly bills for residential. We expect maybe 25 cents in FY17 and 18. That generates and has a big component, obviously, to our revenue. We're at a balanced budget of $43.22 million. That is a 2.14% increase from last year's budget. Primarily, that is an increase based on the rate design. Is it not work? Is it working, Doug? Okay. That also, when we look at affordability, you can see the solid white line is our current FY16 rate design. The two dashed lines, there's a longer dashed line, which is our FY13 cost of service. And this cost of service is effectively what does our minimum bill need to be to cover our fixed costs, and what does our commodity rate need to be to cover our production costs. The smaller dashed line is our pro forma for our FY18. And the purple dots above are the affordability index for the community that we're in. It's based on John Callow's Department of Housing and Urban Development. Those purple dots represent 4% of a one-person through a 5-person family. And the good news is that our current rate design is under it, and our FY18 pro forma is under it. It just has to get shallowed out. We've got to raise the minimum and lower the commodity rate at some point. The average bill, let me go back. The average bill, monthly bill is $62.08 in Murfreesboro for our residents. The TAP revenue we're looking at, this is all we did. This is down from last year, but not significantly, but we just looked at the FY16 budget to match the projected TAP revenue we're generating this year. It's about $4.5 million. This is comes in as an income. It comes in as a revenue, and it gets put out as an expense to our reserve account. So this is, new development, system development charges, and we bank this money for increase or capacity projects. That's how we're paying for, say, our advanced metering infrastructure. The expenses, again, we're the expenses match revenue. It's balanced, so it's a 2.14% increase. I'll go into a little more detail on that. We have 19.63 increase on capital outlay. That's the debt service. I'll show you in a minute. We know we've got a $52.3 million CIP over the past 3 years, and we've gone through about half of that, so that capital outlay went up significantly. Our reserve income is going, reserve expense is going down about 18.8%. Our capital expenditures, our rate-funded capital expenditures, is going down 8.7%. Our operating expenses are going up around 4%. Again, our operating expenses, this is just dialing in a little bit more into the detail. Salaries and wages are up 4.74%. Utilities are up 5%. And city service reimbursements up 66%, and that is primarily reimbursement on information technology support and software support as well, maintenance. This is our capital expenditures. Again, we're down about $440,000. That's an 8.7% decrease from last year. All of this is in, obviously, the notebook that we've handed out. As far as personnel goes, we've asked and been approved by the city manager for 3 additional employees. One is a systems analyst that's dealing with the more of our information technology. Since our information technology platforms we've invested so much into those, we need an extra person to help support us there. That's going to be underneath Chris Lilly. Chris Lilly has endorsed that as well. We also have a rehab technician that we've budgeted. That is to help us with our sanitary sewer infiltration inflow program. We'll be working in the engineering department. And we also have a new stormwater inspector, and that is primarily dealing with post-construction runoff control. With the post-construction requirements we've had over the past several years, we have not had anyone going out and making sure that those construction site runoff controls have been maintained properly. So this person, with increased growth, they're going to be looking at new controls going in the ground, but they're also going to have a primary role in making sure that pre-existing controls are being maintained properly, almost like our fats, oils, and grease inspector. Have to make sure that people are actually pumping some things out. The stormwater fund, you can see here that we have, it'll come in, there you go, a 1.8% increase in revenue and a 2.15% increase in expenses. The working capital reserves are in a declining, are now based on the fact that we are spending on capital improvement projects. There is a detailed 5-year CIP on the stormwater fund in your notebook. I put this little purple line in there. The financial policies say we do not go below 12 months of operating expenses, so we're just over roughly double of where our basement limit is set. Going to the debt-funded capital projects, you've seen this cash flow diagram before. We're roughly halfway through our $52.3 million in projects. The kind of the lighter blue on the right of that "We Are Here" arrow is the Phase 4D that just kicked off. We are planning on, that's the plant expansion at Sinking Creek. We are planning on having a groundbreaking ceremony for that at some point and try to make it a pretty big deal, because a lot of previous board members never thought that plant would get expanded as we've been able to accomplish. So we're very proud of that accomplishment. There is an annual debt service chart on page 82 if you want to look at what our total debt service is and how we're looking at retiring that over time. As far as rate-funded capital projects, we created in FY15, you see the bar there on the left, we were able to create some sinking funds based on our revenue that we received. However, this year, based on the fact that we did have that large, some of that debt's hit now, we've had to take away some of those sinking funds. So that money that was being put into a sinking fund is now being used for payment of debt. The working capital reserves pro forma, we have on page 87 an itemized list of projects that is being paid for by cash on hand in our working capital reserve account. This kind of shows you that we are planning on spending that money. The red line is, again, 12 months of operating expenses that we are not allowed to, it's kind of, we call it a secured reserve balance that we are not financially, our policies won't allow us to go to dip below, I guess, in case of emergencies or some other major project that is deemed proper to spend money on. Real quick on accomplishments and goals. We always look at our effective utility management. We do have the blue line as target areas for improvement. The green line is where we believe where current performance is. We're strong financial viability and product quality, stakeholder understanding, employee development, customer satisfaction, and community sustainability. We're needing some improvement on. So it's good to know where you're at. And so we're trying to measure some things, and if you can't measure it, if you're not measuring it, you're not managing it. And we do have our eyes on the proper targets. Again, this is a project snapshot. We do want to look at sustainability, but also dovetail that with financially viable or affordable, and we do want to be customer focused. So system and plant, information technology, strategic planning, and kind of our lean, performance-driven model through our EUM. We need to recover some water loss that we're incurring right now. This is the Sinking Creek plant expansion. It's the $30.5 million expansion that's going to increase our capacity by 50%. This is kind of our IT flow chart. The AMI is step 5 out of, I guess, 6. We're actually working on step 6 right now with the Tax and Finance Department through the Enterprise Resource Planning software that's going to be going live here before too long. And we're real excited about our water resource integration plan. This is dovetailing with the Murfreesboro 2035. We all know growth is coming. We just talked about it with schools. We just talked about it with roads. We talk about it with Parks and Rec. We talk about it with water and sewer. We know these numbers are coming, and we've got to get ahead of the game. And while the 2035 plan did a great job on scenario planning, we now have to go into some business models to go into some decision scenarios. So where are we going to strike the path? Where are we going to spend the money? What's the best bang for the buck to handle the growth that's coming? So we're looking at developing partnerships. Long-term strategic approach here is we're on target for, say, 2025. We've got the advanced nutrient removal stuff going on at the plant. To 2035, we're going to have to change the regulations. We're going to have to influence regulators. We're going to have to develop partnerships with agriculture, get some innovative permitting strategies to let us achieve that 32 million gallons a day that we expect to have to deal with in 2035. And by 2040, we're looking at changing the culture, taking that, going to the next slide, taking that high reuse, that highly treated effluent, that highly treated water that's coming out of the water reclamation facility, and using that as a water supply resource. So it's happening out west. It's not going to happen anytime here soon, but it is something that if you look out west and you see it migrating back to the east, by the time maybe I have grandkids or great-grandkids, it's probably going to be something that's pretty socially acceptable, hopefully. And so that's really it. We just ask for your approval for the water and sewer budget and the stormwater budget for FY16. And I'm available for any questions.
Darren, you may need Doug for this one. Tell the public about your customer service enhancements your payment? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Well, we have gone, June of last year, June of 2014, we did go live with our advanced, CIS Infinity is the name of the software that has allowed us to go into a state-of-the-art, off-the-shelf customer information system software platform that has allowed us to put, you can generate an account with Murfreesboro Water and Sewer online. You can check your monthly bills. You can see your history. You can pay online. We now have an interactive voice response system, so the telephone system you can choose to immediately talk with a customer service clerk, or you can go straight into an account inquiry to your account and pay online via credit card over the phone as well. Or if you just want to, find out what your balance is and when your due date is. So we've really ramped up the customer service side of our the Water and Sewer Department, because we did recognize that through a self-assessment that we were lacking. We needed to improve in these areas, and so we've spent lots of time, effort, and money, and we appreciate so much the support of the board and the council and city administration in allowing us to go there. I think the customers really appreciate it. And staff has done a great, I don't want to forget staff. They do such a great job. Customer service can be a very tough job if you all have ever done it, and sometimes people just aren't satisfied sometimes, even though you're giving it your best, but they work real hard, and of course the guys out in the field and the plants who are working 24/7, can't say enough about them. They're a great group of folks, and it makes my job easy.
Hey, Darren, as
Yes,
it
sir.
relates to reuse, is it accurate to say, or is it not really this way, that if we figure ways to put reuse into place that aren't necessarily or that are a little more accepted, I guess I would say, out east?
Right.
Is it the sooner that we do that, will that help prolong the necessity to have a more broad reuse spectrum?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. The problem, it's a unique situation because in the summertime we have such a high demand for this. It is a hot commodity, literally. I mean, golf course needs it. Everything on Med Center needs it. The farmers, we've got agricultural folks that want it, and it's this sought after commodity. And then what happens in November? It turns into a waste product again because irrigation systems get winterized and crops aren't growing, and so now you have to do something with it from November through March. What do you do with it? And that's where we got to get the regulators to say, let us put it in the streams. The streams have higher flows in the winter. Let us put it in the streams during that period of time because their higher flows have more assimilative capacity. We will shed the load and give people as much water as they need through the summer because people are seeking it, and we can expand our system. So we are trying, they want to look at the creek or the river when it's at a trickle in the summer. I'm not worried about the summertime because we can keep expanding the system and keep broadening that reuse. Where we're getting into the trick is in the wintertime. How do we dispose of it in the wintertime?
So right now in the summertime, are we could we get rid of everything that we kind of need to get rid of for our numbers? Is that, are we currently doing it, or
pretty much? Yeah, I mean, right, pretty much. We had to build another tank because what was happening. I don't mean to keep going here, but we had a 500,000 gallon tank at the plant, and when the golf course irrigated and everybody on Med Center irrigated, that 500,000 gallon tank got sucked dry in the middle of the summer.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we had to build another 1.5 million gallon tank so that we could meet that peak demand in the summer. Now, if we have a big, long, prolonged rain event, then we won't get rid of every bit of all of it. But during the driest part of the summer, we're getting rid of as much as we can.
And it may be something that we look at, and I know you guys have talked about this, that as subdivisions develop, and even older subdivisions that we're as we expand those lines, we're able to put those into subdivisions and offer that as an opportunity to be able to not use our drinking water to irrigate.
It's something that we're going after the big targets, the the Cherry Siegel soccer complexes, the Old Fort Golf Course, maybe some of the VA property that, even though I know it's not necessarily, the MTSU farms, the Williamson tract. We're trying, and that's where I say we're trying to cultivate those partnerships. We've got to find people that really, it's a win-win. And there are win-wins out there. We just, and part of the utility of the future, I know that's kind of a weird term, but it's a term that's being used, is that utility managers have to start taking on a different role than we have in the past, that we do have to become more facilitators. We do have to become more maybe entrepreneurial and help pull together some deals and finding these win-wins and brokering those.
Any questions for Mr. Gore?
Might brag on Mr. Gore for a second. I believe he graduates from Leadership Rutherford tomorrow, so he'll join many of you as a graduate of that program.
Great
job.
job.
I do get to give the speech, so if anybody wants to come up there and, yeah. I got elected as the, I don't know what you call it.
What time is the speech?
No, it's at Doubletree. I don't know. I'm gonna try to avoid the Prezi. Stephanie told me I got 10 minutes or I get the hook.
I assume with a PowerPoint, a speech with a PowerPoint, right?
Well, I really want to. You guys have heard it before. I mean, it's just, I know, it's an addiction. I'm sorry.
It's all right. Thank you, Mr. Gore.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Lyons?
That's going to conclude our presentation on the budget. If you had any other items that you wanted to give us direction on this evening, we'd be glad to take that now. Of course, we'll have our public hearing, your first meeting in June. I believe that's June the 4th. And so if you've got any other items you want to point us toward, you obviously will have 3 readings of the budget ordinance, so you'll have several times to make any amendments. I know I received some suggestions on some outside agencies, which I forwarded to Ms. Wright, that following your public hearing we'll have prepared for you. But if there are any other items you'd like to talk to us about,
I just want to go on record as saying, I know many of us have done this for a while. This has been the best budget that I can remember that we've ever gone through. And, you know, it was tougher when we were dealing with some lean times, but you know, you make those preparations to be able to be in situations like we are now. So great job. They've all left, but great job to all staff members.
It was a team effort, including the council.
I have something I want to bring up. This just hit me yesterday. My new favorite, this is not a joke. My new favorite pastime is hanging out with senior citizens, okay? And at the sports com.
Talking about coming sit next to Doug and I.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, this little group I'm a part of, I'm the youngest one in the group. Being
how you feel, Ms. Harris.
Being almost 63 in a couple of months. And the oldest person in the group is 92.
Awesome.
And so they introduced this to me yesterday, and I meant to say something to you today, Mr. Lyons, about it. And it's not going to really cost the city, I don't think, anything. They want to start a pickleball group here.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of the pickleball?
Yeah.
Okay, and they said all they want is one tennis court, and they can play pickleball 2 games on 1 court. And they said it's a combination of, you can play it indoors or outdoors, and it's played on a badminton-sized court, and it's played with a paddle that's smaller than a tennis racket, but no larger than a ping pong ball, and a plastic ball. And I did a little research, and it's in all 50 states. The closest one we have to us is in Franklin. It's big in Franklin. So as we are looking at things, and they say it's not going to cost anything, they just need a tennis court to play it on. So
that's a great idea.
We'll
we
get
have one.
Mr. Goodwin in touch with them, and we'll.
I did call
make it
Mr. Goodwin. I didn't have time to get back with him, but and I know in the morning they start like 6 to 9. I don't ever join them before 8, but they really work out. I mean, and it's a growing thing, and they are very excited if we can get just 1 pickle court.
We have a pickle court in our driveway.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, you tell them to come on over and then play in the driveway. I can't beat my kids.
Do you like it?
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, they say it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So if that's something we can look at.
Y'all been drinking.
No. Pickle juice.
Yeah.
Okay, you have some statements in front of you, and I will tell you that Councilman Smotherman did send me a text saying that he would, I asked him if he wanted me to FaceTime him so he could make a motion for the paid statements, but you have a list of statements in front of you.
Let's go down the line.
Move we pay the bills.
Second.
All right, Ms. Wright?
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Washington. Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Any other business to come before the council? Seeing none, we'll stand adjourned.